My name is Gasia Mikaelian, and I'm coming to you through KTVU Fox 2 News in the San Francisco Bay Area. Today, we're talking about this new phase of life many of us are entering when it comes to going back to work and school and society in general. COVID pandemic restrictions are easing, and that means we're seeing people we haven't seen in a long time. So let's talk about having some difficult conversations with people who matter very much to us. I welcome to this conversation Celeste Headlee. You're a journalist and author of the book We Need to Talk: How to Have Conversations That Matter. Thanks for being with us, Celeste.
My pleasure.
It does feel as though many things are loosening up, and many of us might be seeing office mates or parents at school we haven't seen in a while. It's exciting, but it can also be tricky.
It can. And the first thing to remember is that this is something we all have in common. There's a few things that are sort of common ground for everyone right now. The first is that we have a shared trauma. The past year, regardless of your circumstances, obviously some people had it more difficult than others, but regardless, it has not been easy. So everyone sort of has this place of commonality where we can at least meet each other on the same playing field. That's number one. Although, again, remember, trauma is not always the easiest thing to talk about. The other thing is that social skills are skills. Just like riding a bike, well, much like riding a bike or swimming, we haven't really been exercising this skill very much, which means your social skills may have eroded a bit. And it's not you. You're not alone. It's all of us. We're all going to be a little bit wobbly once we get back on that bike.
A lot of people, I've seen on Instagram, right? They say, guess what? In the past year, I remodeled my kitchen. I lost 10 pounds. My children speak French. And I think I didn't do that or that or that. So when we do see our peers again, I think we have to be very careful in not approaching the past year as a, kind of a vacation, even though for some people it may have felt that way. Those people who are very, very fortunate to have escaped medical trauma, financial trauma, loss of a loved one, all these things that have been happening.
Yeah, and if someone is coming to you and saying, "Hey, I remodeled my house," and you yourself didn't have that experience, the pandemic has been financially devastating to me in particular. I'm a public speaker, right? I mean, my business went from gangbusters to zero. And there's a lot of people like me. So if someone were to say that to me, I would say, I am so glad that that's how the pandemic was for you. That wasn't my experience. But, it's good to know that somebody had a more positive or less traumatic experience than I did. You don't have to turn it out though into some kind of Olympic competition of suffering. In other words, you don't have to one up each other in terms of how difficult it has been. The best thing to do is accept what people tell you about themselves, right? If they tell you that this has been their experience of COVID, accept that. And then you can share your own experience. Just keep in mind the rule is I think is a fact, you think is an opinion.
Got it. Got it. Let's talk about sort of kind of a more black and white issue. The issue of vaccinations. I know we've talked a lot about some employers are requiring them, some universities are saying students have to be vaccinated. When it comes to our everyday life, how can you or should you ask someone if they've been vaccinated?
Think about it as in any other way of about something that might be life threatening. How would you ask someone if they smoke before you were in a car with them? How would you ask them if they had guns in the home before your kid went and played at their house? It doesn't have to be a philosophical discussion. You can approach this the same way you would, let's say, if your kid had a peanut allergy and you had to ask the family if they were going to serve peanut butter at a birthday party. I would approach it with as little um underlying undercurrents as possible and just be completely straightforward about it. You know, I'm sure you're as concerned about safety as I am. Have you gotten vaccinated yet? My vaccination came through and I spent my 2-week period. I'm so happy to say I'm inoculated. Did you have the same luck? You can approach it that way. I don't know if you've ever had somebody come and try to tell you bad news and they dance around it for a really long time. And it makes you feel awkward because you're like, I'm an adult. Just tell me. And this is sort of the same thing with the vaccinations. We can show respect to other people by being straightforward and honest.
And I imagine volunteering your own vaccination status might help the other person open up a little about theirs.
Absolutely. And you can just simply say, I'm worried about this. COVID has made me anxious. It's made me nervous. Sorry to ask you, but have you been inoculated yet?
Let's talk about something else that's happening, certainly in my life, probably in yours. I'm calling it the COVID creep. We've all been super careful in my house. We haven't had anyone inside these four walls for more than a year now. When you have friends who promise they will just stay in your backyard, but then one says, "Can I run in and use your bathroom? Can I take a look at that new can I take a look at that new backsplash you put up in your kitchen?" When you want to have people come over, which is a natural thing to do, how do you prevent them from kind of creeping into areas of your home that you're uncomfortable having them in?
I would say give people the benefit of the doubt. Even if you suspect that they're taking the pandemic a little bit more lightly than you are, I would say pretend that they've forgotten. So if somebody, and this has happened to me where someone said, "Hey, can I run in real quick?" And I say, "Absolutely, sometime probably early next year." I will see you next year. In the meantime, it's been great talking to you. It looks like you need to go. I won't keep you any longer. You again, the more straightforward you are about it, the less it becomes sort of the elephant in the room that everyone's sort of talking around and dancing around because they don't want to speak about it. This is absolutely something everyone can talk about. And the more we normalize it, the less weird it feels every time we talk about it. So we have to stop pretending like this is you know, someone's deep dark secret that it's not okay to discuss. You can discuss it. If someone is trying to creep into your house and they want to look at your backsplash, although now, you brought it up, maybe I want to see your backsplash. You can say, "Yes, I totally want to show you off my backsplash and in a few months when we're all safe and inoculated, I will invite you over."
But what if that turns into like, come on, Celeste, you're kind of being a little rough. What if people say, look, I'm vaccinated, you're vaccinated, things are loosening up. I promise I'll hold my breath. I have heard all of this. How do you enforce your own rules without coming off looking and sounding like a jerk?
Well, I just take it on me. They say, "Come on, Celeste, I'm vaccinated." I say, "I know. I'm sure that your comfort level is different than mine, but this is my comfort level, and I'll probably relax in the months ahead. But right now, this is how I feel, and these are the boundaries I've had to make me feel okay about meeting with my friends. And so, thank you so much for respecting them."
I had something happened to me a couple of weeks ago. We met up with family friends for the first time in more than a year in person, and the husband came over, and as he was hugging me, he said, "Don't worry, I'm vaccinated." And I just
Oh.
thought, but wait. It was almost like, I mean, I don't want to say an assault, but it felt different than a regular hug. So my question to you is this: when someone advances toward us to give a hug and we instinctively kind of pull back, how do you have that conversation in that split second?
Yeah, I say, "I'm so sorry. I apologize. I'm not comfortable with that yet. Please give me a little bit of time. It's obviously taking me longer than it is taking you. That's great, but I'm not there yet." And again, this is something that you can just again, A, speak openly about it. B, it does kind of feel a little bit assault is the wrong word, but it feels very intrusive for people to do that. We have to understand that we all have varying comfort levels. This has not been fear of getting a cold. This has been fear of death. And in some cases, COVID has taken the lives of people that we love. One of my friends has long COVID and she's afraid she's going to be disabled for the rest of her life. So this is not something where we can just sort of laugh it off. Some people are not going to be comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable with it. There's some people who are even less comfortable than I. So, A, prepare yourself that even if you feel like you're following all the rules, there are other people who have even stronger rules than you do. That's number 1. And number 2, prepare you can rehearse what you're going to say. That's okay. It is walk yourself through role play so that when you're in the moment, you're not in that fight, flight, or freeze. You don't want to freeze in the moment. You want to have those words ready to go. I'm sorry, I'm not comfortable yet. Give me some time and give me some space, please.
Can you help us? I joke that I feel like I'm a bit of a private investigator these days because when I talk to members of my family and just the couple friends I've kept in touch with, everyone swears up and down, we've been super safe. We're not doing anything. And then you hear, we just got back from Mexico. And you think, I thought you were being super safe, right? So it changes my perception of the person a little bit when you hear something like that. So my question to you on this is, when everyone swears up and down that they're being safe, but then you find out that, oh, they took a vacation to Hawaii, or, oh, they've been going out to restaurants, left and right ever since we started being allowed to do that. How do you handle that sort of information when it's someone you really do care about, but don't want to be around because of those circumstances?
So a couple things. First of all, remember this happens all the time. I have friends who swear up and down that they are very healthy eaters, and yet they go to McDonald's and think nothing of grabbing a quick chicken nuggets. I have friends who say they're really active, and yet their exercise schedule, to my perception, does not suggest activity. So we have all kinds of these different levels of perception, and we all judge things to be normal according to what we think is normal. So again, of course, someone is going to say they've been safe, and of course, someone else is going to say you haven't. The question here is really about boundaries. And when this is interfering with your particular boundaries, like if someone just got back from Mexico and they want to come over, that's your boundary. And it is absolutely okay for you to say, I hope you had a great trip to Mexico. I'm not comfortable with that yet. I'll see you in a couple months. On the other hand, if this is somebody announcing on Facebook or something, we just went to Mexico, I would really hesitate before you write that post saying that's not safe, blah 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 blah, whatever that may be. There's no point to it. Your advice will not be heard. It will most likely make them feel defensive. And we know scientifically that when someone feels defensive, it actually reinforces the belief they already have. It strengthens their sense of confirmation bias. So there's almost no point in arguing back over their opinion. The only time you're able to, I would recommend that you do so is when, again, it's going to have an impact on your own boundaries.
I remember back in the pandemic, in the beginning months, sort of, when masks were recommended but not required. I did have a couple conversations from people who said, well, I don't need to be wearing one. And I would say, well, I would hope that you would. And it felt like we were clashing over that. In a sense, it's a lot easier when something is a mandate versus when something is a recommended. Restaurants are open, but even Dr. Anthony Fauci said he's not going and eating at restaurants indoors these days. So is it that gray area that can kind of produce these sorts of clashes?
Yeah, and part of the reason that it induces clashes is because we feel the need to tell people what they should and shouldn't be doing. Um, I'm not a health professional, so I'm not Anthony Fauci. I'm not the leader of the CDC. It is not my position to be telling Americans how to behave. I'm also not one of those unfortunate retail store employees who have to enforce a mask mandate at the entrance of the store. That means that if I'm going to tell someone whether they should be wearing a mask or not, it's because they're within 10 feet of me or they're trying to come to my house. If they're near me, then yes, absolutely. I say, whoa, where's your mask? Every other place, it's better to keep it to yourself. And I don't say that because I don't believe strongly in taking the best practices you possibly can, not only to keep yourself safe, but to keep everyone else safe. But I say that because there's just no benefit in giving them your opinion. Unsolicited advice is interpreted as an attack by the brain. And so it's just most likely 99 times out of 100 going to make things worse.
And finally, can you circle back just to the conversation we had at the very beginning of this when it comes to, reentering the office, let's say? And I don't know what other people's experience has been for the past year. I know we've talked a lot about compassion over the past year, empathy. And I think for a minute, our country was a little bit more empathic. I get the sense that maybe some of that is out the window now because we get our lives back. So if you can help guide us through this reentry process to work and school and other places where we haven't been, what's your best advice when it comes to seeing people in social and work settings for the first time?
I mean, the first thing is always to simply acknowledge the elephant in the room and say, wow, this feels a little awkward. I haven't chatted around my desk for a very, very long time. How has it been for you? Right. The other thing I would say is that things weren't particularly healthy before the pandemic began. Our social skills were already eroding. We were already avoiding each other. We were already being way too argumentative. And so maybe this is a chance for a reset. Maybe this is a moment for us to think, okay, what wasn't serving me before the pandemic began? And how could maybe I could, instead of trying to get back to normal, maybe I could create a new normal and refresh, reset. Maybe that's really the beauty, the small silver lining of this moment.
I appreciate so much of what you're saying. In a way, it kind of feels like it's our first day at a new high school, right? And you're almost asking yourself, who do I want to be? And in that way, it is hopefully a little bit of a positive chance.
And hopefully, when I first started high school, I cut my hair super short and I have curly hair and it looked like incredibly horrible. So hopefully it's not that kind of bad decision that you make. Leave your hair alone.
Yeah, exactly. Leave your hair alone. Don't cut bangs. I feel like we all wanted to do at the beginning of the pandemic. Well,
Right.
Celeste Headlee, I've been a fan of yours forever on the radio. It's a joy to be able to connect with you here on camera. I'll just remind our viewers, Celeste Headlee, journalist and author. We Need to Talk is your book, How to Have Conversations That Matter. Thank you for connecting with us. And I do wish you the very best.
Thank you so much. It's great to talk to you.